Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Derek Haseltine, Senior Director of the Hertz Foundation Fellowship Program. I'm delighted to see so many of you here to learn about the Hertz Fellowship and hope you find this session useful as you're considering pursuing this opportunity. For this session, I will first provide an overview of the fellowship in terms of who is eligible, what we look for when selecting fellows, and then a brief overview of our application, and also discuss our selection timeline. After this intro, you'll have an opportunity to join breakout rooms. Each one of these is hosted by one of our in-school fellows, who I'll introduce a little bit later. The first portion of the session is being recorded and will be posted to our website shortly afterwards. So a bit of introduction on the Hertz Foundation. We are a 501c3 not-for-profit with a mission to identify and support the nation's most promising young science and technology graduate students in applied physical and biological sciences, mathematics, and engineering, whose creativity, talent, and ambition compels them to seek solutions to the country's greatest challenges. Over the past 60 years, the foundation has awarded over 1,300 individual graduate fellowships, the goal of which has remained the same since day one, to provide early investment in individuals that show the greatest promise for future innovation and whose long-term career will lead to positive impacts on the U.S. and science and technology enterprise and strengthening of our national security. On our website, you can learn a lot more about our history, including our founders, John and Fanny Hertz, as well as how our fellows are making history and having tremendous impact in various areas from climate to defense to human health, space, and many more, with many leading at the highest levels, commanding military units, running national labs, and serving as university presidents. In terms of who can apply to the Hertz Fellowship, the following slide outlines our eligibility criteria. If you have not already done so, I would strongly encourage you to review our detailed FAQ page that answers several of the questions that were received during the registration for this session. Applicants must be U.S. citizens or perm residents. Broadly speaking, the foundation supports graduate students working towards a degree in the applied physical and biological sciences, mathematics, and engineering. And defining applied here, we use applied is broadly construed to mean fields of endeavor in which one applies, invents, and/or develops results from the basic physical science to generate solutions to problems of comparatively near-term widespread human interest. The foundation does not direct fellowships towards particular fields of study, and we leave it up to each applicant in the application to advocate regarding their specific area of interest as an applied physical science. Also, as our selection committee works to identify fellowship recipients each year, they do not have set quotas that they hope to satisfy with respect to various fields that we support. However, the field does not support descriptive or behavioral research. If you have any concerns whether or not your proposed plans are tenable or not, we encourage you to email us directly. You can email fellowshipinfo@hertzfoundation.org. In some instances, we might ask for an additional clarification and solicit a final determination from our selection committee after we have this information. Also, the determination of exactly how many fellowships we award each spring is approved by our board in the fall. 19 were awarded last year, and we anticipate about the same this year. I'll also note that 52 finalists were announced last year, and we expect a similar number this year. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the opportunities for our finalists that we've offered over the past few years in a bit. Our target audience for this application are those that plan to be either first or second year PhD students when the funding will start in fall of 2026. Our goal is to deploy fellowship funding as early as possible in grad school so that recipients have the freedom and the flexibility to pursue whether it be their target advisor or start working on some high risk, high reward projects early in their graduate training. Therefore, we encourage anyone who might be in a senior year, those that are in gap years, considering grad school and enrolling next fall, or those that are first year students to apply. Anyone beyond the first year certainly can apply, but we would specifically ask that in the application they address any special circumstances warranting this, as well as the research leverage the fellowship would provide, as they will be a third year student or beyond when the funding begins in fall of 2026. As you're aware, typically at this stage of graduate training, projects have probably already been ironed out and decided. And again, we hope to deploy the funding as early as possible in grad school. Also do want to reinforce the last bullet point there that you do not need to be currently attending one of our participating institutions. We have just close to 50 participating schools, meaning that they have accepted our terms and conditions for our fellows. Um, you also don't need to petition your school. So if you're not at a participating school, there's no need to petition them now if you plan on continuing to enroll there. If you are awarded a fellowship, just a quick clarification on that. If you're awarded a fellowship and plan to take your PhD to a school that's not on the list, you can request to have them added. We're happy to report that we had it added two new schools last year, both Rockefeller University and Memorial Sloan Kettering's graduate school. So delighted to have them now as participating institutions. In addition to having an applied focus, we also expect the fellowship recipients intend to direct their studies towards understanding of solving near-term problems facing our nation. Actually, in our fellowship agreement documentation, each fellow commits to making their skills and abilities available for purposes of assisting the U.S. in times of national emergency. However, this commitment with quotes is not a contractual obligation. We don't tell our fellows that the nation requires their action, and we don't have a definition of what constitutes a national emergency. We leave that to each fellow to determine in their eyes whether the nation faces a truly serious challenge and if they're positioned to use their skills, knowledge, and abilities to address that. And we have some great examples of the fellows' call to action on our website if you're interested in learning more. So what we look for in terms of applicants, when we split off into the breakout rooms, you'll have an opportunity to hear from our fellows about their experience through both the selection process and what they feel might have stood out for them in terms of both their application and then also the evaluation from the interviewers. You'll hear about their research interests and their future goals. But I will focus on a few defining characteristics that we screen for in our fellows. We're not screening just for academics or looking at what some might consider traditional academic metrics, number of publications, presentations at national meetings and national conferences. All of those are great, but that's not a box that we check that fellows have to have a certain number of those for applying. It is a very holistic review process, and we look for certain characteristics in that holistic review. First and foremost, looking for a deep curiosity, grit, and determination to pursue complex multidisciplinary topics. We're looking for those that are curious about issues extending both in their field, but also outside of their field, and those who can use that strong foundation in physical principles to begin addressing some of these questions. And we'll hear from some of our fellows who will talk about the interview process, and that's where we dig into that curiosity and scientific areas maybe outside of your comfort zone. We're looking for creative problem solvers who have already started to demonstrate their own way in their own research, carving out their own path, and in some cases, maybe taking even unconventional ways to address specific questions. We're looking for active leaders, not necessarily those with leadership titles, so not necessarily president, vice president of clubs or organization, but those who are really leading their research efforts. So really the driver of their research and their ideas, really with this vision to map out a ambitious and ambitiously potential vision. A Hertz Fellow I would characterize as someone who takes charge and thinks about things in very unique ways. For some additional reference on the types of individuals that we have selected and awarded a fellowship, I would encourage you, if you haven't already done so on our website, there's also a fellowship directory or a fellows directory. It contains information for all of our 1,300 plus awardees. The directory is searchable by year, so you can pull up last year's class of 2025 and so on back to 1963. You can also search for graduate school and undergraduate school. You can search by topical areas. And many of our fellows, at least in the last 20 or 30 years or so, have a short bio page on there that will also allow you to learn a little bit more about their thesis work that they did as a Hertz Fellow, their research interests, and those who are currently in school, what their future directions might entail. So one of the things that I find most exciting each year as we go through this process is really the breadth of applications. I had mentioned two new partnership institutions from last cycle. We've also seen a really nice expansion of undergraduate institutions represented with this list growing each year. This is really a snapshot over the last 6 years. Certainly welcome all of those who might be affiliated with any of these schools, and a special welcome to those who don't see their school listed. Hopefully we can continue that trend of adding schools to this list next year, and we look forward to your application. So very quickly in terms of what the fellowship provides in terms of compensation, it provides renewable funding for up to 5 years of support with an annual stipend paid out over 9 months. The 9-month model encourages fellows to use the summer to explore innovative research, whether it be at their home institution, a visiting institution, or take on internships. Um, the Hertz Fellowship provides the opportunity to coordinate with other fellowships. So we do stack with other fellowships. So if you were to apply to NSF, receive NSF and Hertz, you can coordinate those two together. Some of our fellows that will be leading the breakout rooms have coordinated funding and they could speak to that experience. NSF is really the most common research fellowship that we do coordinate with. And in the case where somebody receives NSF and Hertz, on their NSF supported year, they would receive an additional Hertz supplemental stipend. And then they would have a bumped up stipend beyond the 38,000 for the remaining years of Hertz only funding. We funded with a variety of fellowships and I'd be happy to take more questions about that afterwards. Also, another unique benefit that recognize might not be needed by a majority of students, but certainly a nice benefit that we do provide is a $5,000 additional stipend for fellows with dependent children. And we're excited that a few of our recent fellows have taken advantage of this very nice benefit. And that's an annual benefit. So in addition to the financial package, the fellowship has what I think are a few major differentiators that I briefly wanted to touch upon, and certainly will ask our fellows to elaborate in their respective breakout rooms. First is the freedom to innovate or academic freedom. So the Hertz funding structure, having 5 years of funding, provides benefits to individuals really at a pivotal point in their career. Having this 5 years of renewable independent funding being deployed in the early stages of graduate school, we encourage fellows to pursue bold ideas wherever they may lead. This mechanism often frees a lot of the financial constraints from maybe some overly narrow directions of their advisor. In a lot of cases, also frees up teaching to have that protected time to pursue their research without the time sink of teaching. Fellows have a vote of confidence from the foundation. We empower them to think in daring new directions, collaborate across fields, and secure advising that they might not otherwise be privy to under their program. So we have numerous fellows that are co-advised, oftentimes by individuals outside of their program, and in some cases outside of their institution. Having a Hertz Fellowship nearly guarantees the choice of advisor, can also open the door to unique collaborations, potential co-advising, as well as the encouragement, what I said before, taking risks early on in projects. The other major benefit is the Hertz community. So in addition to the freedom to innovate, this flexible, having that flexible research independence, Hertz Fellows have access to really a one-of-a-kind, multi-generational intellectual network comprised of about 1,200 living scientists and tech leaders. These individuals collectively provide a very nice welcoming community and unique access for further collaboration and mentorship. Um, Hertz activities, Hertz community activities led throughout the year by our Director of Community in partnership with our team of volunteer fellows known as our Hertz Council, really manage a whole wide portfolio of both social and professional activities that strengthen that fellow connection to the foundation and also to one another. Through these efforts, there's a number of programs throughout the year that intentionally bring fellows together to provide exposure to fields, in some cases within their own field, and many cases outside of their own field, with really active facilitated collaboration. Two signature events that I wanted to just highlight for our in-school fellows, those that are on the fellowship and receiving funding, where we provide registration and travel reimbursement, our annual retreats. So we have one on each coast, and also our summer workshop, which is really a summer conference, typically in July. Retreats are designed to really build community within that in-school population and early career fellows. I'll also note that funding to our retreats and our summer workshop are covered along with travel for 3 years beyond PhD. So really for the entirety of the PhD and then that early career phase of up to 3 years post PhD, funding is provided to both of these events. The summer workshop is our signature annual event that brings together a wider portion of the Hertz Fellows community. I do want to note that both are fellow driven, and there's volunteer opportunities both for our in-school fellows and also our alumni fellows throughout the entirety of their career. And I believe several of our breakout facilitators have served on planning committees for one or both of these. You can also read more about these on our website, and certainly happy to take questions or encourage you to ask questions of our fellows in your breakout rooms. And would also encourage you to ask them how they might have leveraged some of these opportunities for their research. Hertz is committed to mentorship, not only during the fellowship, but really throughout the entirety of a fellow's career. We often use the mantra, once a fellow, always a fellow, and this connection to resources extends beyond grad school. Let me go back really quickly. So the first entree to mentorship starts during the first year. So this year we piloted a peer mentoring program that was launched for our 2025 cohort. And this is really a special opportunity for the new fellows to have a more senior in-school peer fellow working with them throughout their first year of the fellowship, and in some cases their first year of grad school. Additionally, every fellow is assigned one of our senior interviewers who also does in-school check-ins, and they meet annually to discuss not only progress made in the fellowship, but also mapping out goals for the next year, and then also in some cases brokering connections throughout the fellows community or through their own networks, and working with the in-schools to determine how they can really leverage the full benefit of the fellowship. And finally, as I mentioned, our Hertz community. The community program has a series of mentoring opportunities. There's ad hoc opportunities. This year, the foundation is also launching a early career mentoring program, so working with those recent graduates up to 3 to 5 years out from their PhD. So a quick breakdown of our selection timeline. The application is currently open. We'll close on October 31st. So we opened on August 28th. We'll close on October 31st. There is a short little buffer in there for recommenders, so you have a little bit of extra time to get your 4 recommenders completed. There will also be a series of reminders in there going out to both applicants and recommenders that the deadline is coming up, so the mad dash towards the end. Certainly would solicit advice from our fellows in your breakout rooms, but I would say try and get that information as early as possible. More than likely, your recommenders are writing several other recommendation letters for other students. So we will close the application that following Monday, at which point all completed applications will go to our team of reviewers. Every file gets a double read, so there will be 2 reviewers looking at it. This is a highly technical audience. It's not a field-specific audience, so you can certainly write at a technical level, but not to an expert in your field. Those that are chosen to advance will be invited to an interview. We'll have 3 weekends of interviews in December through January. As best as possible, this is a field matched interview. So if you're in chemistry, more than likely you would have a chemist or maybe 2 chemists, or at least somebody who's strongly aligned with chemistry and maybe another field as one of your interviewers. That is a Zoom-based interview. It's sort of designed after the PhD qualifying exam. So a lot of focus on your current research. We can certainly talk more about those in the breakout room. Those that advance from that first phase will be invited to second round interviews, and those are our finalists. They will interview in person. This year will be in Seattle and Boston with travel reimbursement provided. That will be in February. So 2 weekends in February we'll have, not on the same weekend, but 2 separate weekends in February we'll have our finalist interviews in Boston and Seattle. These are not field matched, and really this is designed to probe what our selection committee refers to as your interconnected web of knowledge. After this round of interviews, we'll have the fellowship selection meeting in parallel with our board meeting in March. At the meeting, we'll present a slate of fellowship recommendations that will be developed and put forward to the board, and they will approve the final decision. We will notify the selected fellows shortly after, and then we will have a public announcement in May. So the runway between notification and announcement is really to provide an opportunity for our communications team to work with those selected fellows to collect materials that we can use for our Big Splash finalist announcement. Before I quickly discuss the application, also wanted to share a few opportunities for finalists that we've been really working intentionally to expand opportunities. So as I said, we typically have 20-ish fellowships a year, but we'll have more than double that number of finalists every year. One of the first opportunities is partnerships with two of our partner schools, Case Western Reserve University and Texas A&M. Both finalists have an opportunity for fully funded fellowships that are not contingent upon receiving Hertz, but can certainly be stacked with Hertz if both are received. These generous offerings were spurred by two of our board members with their connections to these respective schools. You can learn more about both of these in our application and also on our website. And further, in the application, on the last page of the application, there's a series of questions in there, this being one of them where you can opt in to express your interest. And at that point, you'll have your information shared with the admissions committees at one or both of these schools if you elect to do so. The other thing I wanted to talk about for finalists during finalist interview weekends are our finalist dinners. So we've worked with our local fellows community. This year will both be Seattle and Boston, pulling together local fellows, and we invite all of our finalists to participate in informal dinner gatherings with local fellows. Um, uh, Here's a couple pictures from last year on the sides. We also present a certificate to our finalists, so you can see that in the middle photo there. This is not part of the interview process, and we intentionally do not invite our second round interviewers to the finalist dinners. We want this to be a laid back, relaxed. I've heard from other fellowships, sometimes the dinner is actually part of the interview process. In this case, no, this is really a chance to meet other fun and exciting scientists in these local communities. Okay, now I want to shift to the application. As a reminder, the 2026 application is now open. The deadline is October 31st. You can open the application at any point. You can open it right now and take a look at the prompts, the questions that we have in there. In terms of what we require, it is a written application. So you will not submit a formal research plan per se. So you won't have a research plan with experimental design, expected outcomes, what you might see in a traditional other research fellowship. But you will be asked to discuss your prior research experience as well as respond to a few prompts that include you commenting on your proposed field of study and your future plans, also your choice of graduate school. And the explanation of choice of graduate school is really not for us to say, yes, that's a partnership school, or no, that's not a partnership school. This really gives us insights into the types of resources and the collaborative experiences and opportunities that you would be looking for and seeking as you carve out your future research plans. And reviewers essentially are interested and they want to see how you're thinking about your field, your thought process, how your interests have evolved, and really where you see yourself fitting into the advancement of your field. They want to hear how you've honed in on your applied aspects of your work, either directly or how your work will directly influence applications. We have a chronological synopsis as one of the essays, and that's essentially the CV, the technical aspects of your CV. So there's a lot of cutting and pasting that you can do into the application with your CV. In terms of research, this being a applied research fellowship, you'll have the opportunity to enter your research citations. We've cleaned that up in last year's application, so that should be an easy process of those of you that have published or works that are in prep. You can include that information. And then we want you to expand on one or two projects that you feel best demonstrate your independent thinking and creativity. So here you really have an opportunity to hone in on those projects. And certainly I would ask your breakout room facilitators what they talked about in their application, if they talked about one experience, two experiences, and how they really drew that information out to get the reviewers excited about their work. And then finally, we require a personal statement. This is really an opportunity to highlight your personal creativity beyond your research and share some aspects of yourself that might not be readily apparent in different parts of the application. So really a chance for you to advocate for yourself, highlight those important attributes, showcase that grit, that determination, and things the narrative that might not come out in other aspects of the application. Really, you have free range to address anything outside of your research that you've already shared, whether it be from informal pursuits, exploratory activities, anything that inspired your extracurricular pursuits, or leisure activities that you think best demonstrate your creativity and your passion. We'll talk a little bit more about this in the breakout rooms, and I would encourage you to ask those questions too. And finally, the one part of the application that you probably have the least control over, but I would recommend getting an early start, and that is the references, which we call recommenders. So just a quick few words on recommenders. We do require four, and we encourage that you seek individuals that can respond to your research abilities. So those who have seen you working in a research environment and can comment accordingly. Once you put this information into the application, it will trigger a notification email to your recommender and prompt them to complete the form. We've added some information this year on our website for recommenders, so you can also steer your recommenders to that information. It provides a little bit more detail on what we're looking for, even though the recommender form has that information. If they want some additional tools and resources, they can look at our website as well. But it is really up to you to make sure that these are secured on that Monday deadline in November. Um, in the application portal, so when you start your application, you'll be able to see when a recommender submits a form, so you can diligently stay on top of things. In some cases, if you have a recommender who's not responding or might be on sabbatical or leave, you also have an opportunity to swap that out with a different recommender at any point in the process. So that concludes information for our fellowship. If you have any questions, as I said, I would encourage you to reach out to us directly at fellowshipinfo@hertzfoundation.org. Also, encourage you to follow us on our various social channels. Throughout the application season, we'll be posting lots of additional information and tips that we've gathered over the last few years from fellows in terms of writing the application, but then also when we move to interviewing, some interview tips and advice.